eclipsing Picasso. A Chinese artist is setting world records at auction. But what's driving global art sales? And can the multi-million-dollar price tags be justified? This is Inside Story. Hello there, welcome to the programme. I'm Shuli Ghosh. Now, beauty, they say, is in the eye of the beholder. And when it comes to art, beauty can also come with a very expensive price tag. For some collectors, investing in the art market can be more lucrative than investing in the stock market. According to the consulting firm Art Economics, the art market has grown enormously in the past 25 years. In 1990, more than $27 billion worth of art was sold through dealers and auction houses. By 2007, the figure had more than doubled to almost $66 billion. And last year, the market was still worth a staggering $56 billion, despite the global economic downturn. China has been driving growth in recent years, and works by Chinese artists have also been highly sought after. 3 of the top-selling artists of 2012 were Chinese, including Jang Dah-Cheng, a lifelong friend of Pablo Picasso. On Monday, 24 of his works were sold at Sotheby's in Hong Kong for a total of $42 million. Margaret Ortigas reports now from Hong Kong.
1,600,000.
Auctioning off some of the finest pieces by the late Chinese master Jang Dah-Cheng. He might not be as well known as some Western artists, but people here are paying millions of dollars for his works. Jang is already the top earner at art auctions. In 2011, his works brought in more than $500 million, a record for a single year of sales. The previous record holder was Pablo Picasso, and his best year was 2010, when his works earned around $360 million.
Chinese fine art has been playing an important role in Chinese mainstream culture. As the quality of life and living standards began to improve, naturally there was more interest in Chinese fine art.
With more money to spend, the Chinese have become major players in the art market, and they're investing in their own artists. Capitalizing on its reputation as a gateway between East and West, Hong Kong also wants to be the bridge between Chinese art and the rest of the world. The city government has budgeted over $2 billion to turn these 40 hectares into a cultural district with a high-speed railway linking it directly to the mainland. And the art world is paying attention. Art Basel, one of the most important international art fairs, came to Asia for the first time this weekend, choosing Hong Kong as its stage.
Art should be shared with others instead of just standing on its own. For me, it's all right to see art becoming more and more commercial.
I hope and I believe that one day Chinese artworks will surpass the Western artworks on the international art scene.
But for the people behind Hong Kong's cultural drive, it's about more than just money and investments. They hope to create a healthy, sustainable art scene here, where works like Jang Dah-Cheng's can be enjoyed simply for their own sake and not just for the money they earn.
Sold at $65 million.
Margaret Ortigas, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
OK, let's bring in our guests today. In Beirut, Jean-Paul Guiragossian, a Lebanese-Armenian artist based in Beijing and son of renowned artist Paul Guiragossian. And via Skype from Hong Kong, Oscar Ho, director of the MA programme in Cultural Management at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme. If I can start with you, Oscar, first of all, what is the appeal of this artist, Jang Dah-Cheng? I know that he's one of the best known and most prodigious Chinese artists of the 20th century, but what makes him such a top-selling artist?
Well, he's definitely an outstanding artist, not only for his skills and also for his knowledge and his ability to revitalize some of the tradition of Chinese, particularly in painting, and revitalizing and bringing new elements. So he is definitely a very outstanding artist in any sense within this modern Chinese art tradition.
I mean, he's quite a diverse artist, isn't he? But I'm interested in this concept of what makes one artist better than another. What makes some of his pieces worth $9 million, for example?
Well, I think his own creative skill, but most important of all, technically, I think he's absolutely outstanding. He's quite a daring person. Of course, he's also from a very strong tradition, very outstanding teacher. But most outstanding of all is that he is a very skillful and daring artist. It is difficult to put him within the context of Western art because he really moved his own way.
Jean-Paul, I know you're a successful artist. You've exhibited all over the world, and I gather that you learned to paint in your father's studio. Why did you decide to move to Beijing?
I'm the type of a guy that I like to learn all the time. We never have enough learning, and we never learn enough before we pass on. And the only way for me to learn was to travel around. Not only I have a studio in Beijing, I have a studio in Berlin, Germany. I have another one in Toronto. I have another one in here in Beirut. But what I love to do is just travel around, learn about cultures. I never judge, and I just go and mix, and then that makes me just richer in my art and in my work. Don't care much about money. I spend more or less everything I have, and most of them goes to charities. But as long as I'm learning something out of it, that's what keeps on pushing me and, you see, making me go to different places and change a studio every 3-4 years. Get a studio and leave another one for me to learn, just for me to learn, as simple as that.
And when we talk about the Asian art market and the fact that a lot of the top art sales are now being driven by the Chinese, how important is the Asian art market? And do the Chinese buy a lot of your paintings, for example?
Now, I'm not going to talk about market. Before the market, I'm going to talk about culture. And like most of the cultures, as much you pour into art, as the culture gets richer and goes further. See, we always wonder why is it that first world countries, they spend $500 million to build an opera house. They spend billions of dollars to build museums. The reason is, as much art you put in your system, as music, poetry, literature, art as painting, sculptures, and like everything that has to do with art, you advance faster and you start seeing further than your nose. And now going back to the market, as we know that the Far East, especially China and India, they have most of the cash money in their position of the world, and they are spending lots of money to buy art. But that's not the reason that I went over there. I went to, I turned around Asia, the Far East, almost all the countries, to find out where I'd like to be. And Beijing is, it's raw still, and it reminds me of, I don't know, 75 years ago, New York City.
But I want to explain, I want to explore why some pieces of art are seen as being worth so much money. For example, these paintings have fetched the most globally. Paul Cézanne's The Card Players is the most expensive painting ever sold. The Qatari royal family paid $250 million for it in 2011. Now, unsurprisingly, Pablo Picasso is also in the top 5. La Rêve, or The Dream, sold earlier this year for $155 million. Jackson Pollock's number 5, 1948, was bought by an unknown buyer, rumoured to be a Mexican businessman, for $140 million. It's the most expensive contemporary or modern piece of art ever sold. And in 2006, an American hedge fund manager, Stephen A. Cohen, bought Willem de Kooning's Woman 3 for just over $137 million. And also that year, Gustav Klimt's Adele Bloch-Bauer 1, once confiscated by the Nazis, fetched $135 million. So my question to you, Oscar, is, are values basically being dictated by a handful of extremely wealthy, mega-rich billionaires?
Okay, the issue is, it's actually a work of art sold for that much money, it might has nothing or little to do with the artwork, but it has a lot to do with who paid for it. Whoever find those artworks meaningful, and whoever have all this money in their pocket, and is willing to spend on it. So one of the reasons is the economic boom in Asia, in China. There are some very rich people who buy work for their own taste. For a long, long time, the Western world dictates what is valuable art, because the buyers are mainly kind of the Western collector. And now the market changed, the wealth shift around. So you see a new development. But
Oscar, I mean, are these pieces being bought by people who appreciate the art, or are they being bought because there is a cachet in spending that much money, in being able to say, I own a $20 million painting?
Of course, they appreciate it. That's why they're willing to pay that much money. But if you don't have no money, even you appreciate it, you cannot buy it, you see. Now, I have to also make it very clear that Jang Dah-Cheng is not the type of art that, normally understood by the general Western collector. It's the Chinese who really appreciate it. So, I got a feeling that whoever buy those work will be Chinese.
I mean, the reason I asked that question, Oscar, is because there is one guy, Ernst Baylor, the Swiss dealer, who, of course, helped set up the world's premier international showcase, Art Basel. And he said, if I can't sell something, I just double the price. Now, that does seem to suggest that there is a certain, snobbishness in wanting to own expensive, beautiful things without actually appreciating the cultural importance of that thing.
Of course, buying a work of art is has very complex reason, and people for buying them for maybe the person know nothing about that work of art, maybe simply for vanity, for image building. It's hard to say. We cannot really simplify it in such a way. For example, a lot of Chinese contemporary art, for example, they're so really well in the West since in the last decade or so. They really, mainly export their art for the Western market.
There's the two sides of things. Like there's the speculation side of things, and there's the art side of things. Now, in my point of view, 85% of the art dealers or gallerists or art collectors, they really don't know what art is. They just see and listen and read about what other art critics and what other people are saying and what is the trend. And I'm going to give you like just a simple example about speculation on art. About 25 years ago, somebody ended up buying about 20 de Koonings, and he ended up buying them for like 150, 200,000 each. And then he went into an auction, and then he raised the price to $1 million. A second auction that he went to, he raised another one. He bought another de Kooning for $1 million. So what happened? His 20 de Koonings, they became 20 million, and we're talking about almost in the 80s, mid 80s and stuff, 1980s. So you see, there's the business part of it. You buy things for cheap, and then you sell them for expensive, and you raise the prices. But the other side of things too, that more or less forces people to go and see what art is and to go and try to understand what art is.
And, I mean, that's a good question, because some stuff is incomprehensible, isn't it? I mean, 2 years ago, we had Ai Weiwei's pile of wooden stools. It went for more than $500,000 in Miami. And you've got Damien Hirst, who sold a cupboard full of scalpels for $2.5 million. I mean, there can't be anyone who doesn't look at some pieces of very expensive art and think, why is that art? I could do that.
Can I say it's politics? It's the same as when you had East Germany and West Germany. West Germany, they were paying big amount of money to the East German artists, just for the sake of telling the East German, the communist side, that we see you come to our side, and then we end up, you become rich and you become very famous. Now Ai Weiwei is everything he stands for is more or less anything to do with against the Chinese government, and the Americans and the Europeans and all the rest of them, they just pour lots of money in just to make a point. Now when East Germany is not there anymore, all the artists that they used to sell for very expensive, they just tune down, and then they're not doing as much as they used to before. And I think it's same thing's going to happen with the rest of the Chinese artists that are against the government. Against the government, like just making a point. There's no such thing as against government or with governments, or everybody has their point of view, and everybody's point of view is legit. It's just the point of view of the other side. If you're with it, you're happy. If you're against it, it's going to annoy you.
What do you think of that, Oscar? That some stuff, some artwork, it becomes more expensive because there is a political reason for that?
Well, for me, even a lot of the time, the so-called political art as shown in Chinese contemporary art is really like for the market. You know, they have no real impact in China. They're exported art, and the Western world love it because they make critical, cynical comment on China. But you know, for whoever live in China, know those art really has nothing to do with the people. Now, Ai Weiwei got into trouble because he's doing more than just art. He actually took action about the earthquake, and really, like, that really got him into trouble. It's not his art.
Yeah, I understand that point. Let's just go back to this point about art as an investment. Now, many of the world's most sought-after artists often outperform the stock markets. For example, the returns on Picasso paintings in the 10 years to 2012, if you have a look at this chart, you can see they've done much better than the S&P indices of 500 leading companies in the US. In fact, they've outperformed the market since 2005, and they rebounded positively after the global financial crisis. So, Oscar, art as a good investment, will it continue to be a good investment, do you think?
Honestly, no. I think it's getting so crazy, the whole thing. The desperation for art, and really people going just berserk. Either Asian art or Western art, I think it's getting ridiculous. The whole thing is a whole Vanity Fair and market speculation. In fact, it's happening to Chinese contemporary art now. In the last few years, been dropping quite dramatically after some really crazy time.
Yeah, I think you're right. In fact, the Chinese market has apparently shrunk by, well, auction sales were down by 30% last year, although US sales went up. But why do you think that is?
Well, it's part of the market. It's running out of excitement. You know, any market always look for more exciting and cheaper kind of possibilities, like the Russian art. Russian contemporary art in the 80s was kind of popular for a little while and then disappeared and moved to China. Now China is getting uninteresting. They're moving to India. You know, that's the rule of the market. You know, once the product's getting too expensive, it's losing any exotic association, then they move on to something else. That's only natural. So don't take it too seriously as art. Just look at it as some sort of marketing products.
Jean-Paul, Oscar says that art won't continue to be a good investment. I mean, you do wonder whether something like Damien Hirst's Pickled Shark will hold its value in the same way as the Mona Lisa does.
I always wondered the same thing, and we had a bunch of critical arguments about these things. It's a fashion. That's the pity side of things. It's like, how much is, what's the limit of it? I was in New York for the Armory Fair, and I was in some houses visiting. And there was some people that bought minimalistic work, and they they bought like, they paid about $10,000-15,000 for a paperwork like that, where the artist end up having just a dot on it. Or he put extremely straight lines with the ruler, and another art. And another art, there was like the guy who had just a movement of his brushstroke, just a movement. And you go on wondering, like, okay, where is it that we're going with this? It's getting absurd.
Yeah,
and it's getting,
I'm sure I could get my daughter to move to do a few of those kind of drawings. And I see this question fascinates me. What is considered good art? I mean, for example, a lot of artists during their lifetime weren't seen as successful. Well, they weren't successful. Some of them, you know, Van Gogh, Monet, Gauguin, they all lived in poverty, and they weren't seen as significant artists until after their deaths. Why is that?
Because simply right now it's just business. Everybody's opening galleries and going into art, just business. It's just a trend. I'm sure, like, within my argument, there was like, I can do what they can do, but they cannot do what I can do. It's as simple as that. These artists that are, well, so-called artists, with all due respect, this is their limit. Their limit is not that far. It doesn't go too far.
I mean, your father,
like
for example, was
Gauguin,
a very successful painter. But do you think his paintings are seen as more valuable now that he's passed away?
Of course, like it was, but simply because in the Arab world they start buying and they start like pouring money into art for them, because they're in Dubai, for example, Christie's went in and they start having auctions, and then prices start going up. Unfortunately, when my dad was alive, because he chose to stay in Beirut, in Lebanon, he didn't go too far. He was the most successful artist in the Arab world, literally the most successful. But again, like, you see, this part of the world, it's, unfortunately, if anybody in here who, like, you have art buyers in Lebanon, let's talk about Lebanon. I'm not going to go around the Arab world. In Lebanon, the problem is that anything that is Lebanese is no good. Anything that comes from the first world is very good, even if that's $1 million and this is $10. People do not have confidence in their own art, in their own people. What Paul Giragossian, my dad, did teach the area in here, he told them that the European came to North Africa and saw colors, and they start putting colors in their artwork. This is the Impressionists when they came out. And pre-impressionists like Delacroix and Jericho and all the gang. But what we did, he said, we looked at the Europeans that they took from us and we start imitating them. Why is it that you want to go and look somewhere else where you have it in here and look for it in here and you'll find it? And that's what did the changing of the concept of.
We're coming to the end of the programme. I just very quickly want to put that point to Oscar. Is it a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes? You know, a specific type of art becomes in fashion at that time. Everyone's too afraid of looking ignorant, so they all agree it's good, and then it becomes expensive.
Of course, it's one of it. I think the biggest problem is that now we measure the quality of our art by its market value. That's really reduced the power and the function of art. Art is much more than that. It has a social cultural meaning. What we have done now is to reduce art to just being a merchandise without looking at its social and cultural meaning to everybody. Now it's become this exclusive products of vanity for the very rich, and this is a dangerous way of looking at it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme today. I really enjoyed that discussion. Thank you to Jean-Paul Giragossian in Beirut and in Hong Kong, Oscar Ho. And that's it for this edition of Inside Story. You can find this programme and many more at aljazeera.com. Just click on the link for programmes and then Inside Story. And you can also leave your comments there too. But from me, Shuli Ghosh, bye for now.